measurements, as well as inter-observer agreement. We'll also look into the correlation between these structures with age as a continuous variable, as well as sex. For the methodology, this will be a prospective cross-sectional observational normative study targeting adult Filipinos rather, with no known eyelid or orbital pathology from a tertiary care hospital. So my projected sample size is around 70 patients. This factors in the standard deviation seen in previous studies. Yun nga lang po, these were in Western populations, where they found a standard deviation of about 0.5 millimeters, accounting for a standard error of the mean of 6.5 and a 95% confidence interval. We see a mean estimate with each added structure at an approximate precision of plus minus 0.13 millimeters, which is also consistent with previous studies. So, as I mentioned, these calculations were a sample of 60. This was increased to 70 patients, accounting for a 10 to 15% dropout rate. For the methodology in particular, patients will be recruited among a population of Filipinos aged 18 or older with an MRD1 of between 3 to 5. This is to rule out patients who may have significant ptosis or lid retraction that may confound findings. Patients also must have no significant lid asymmetry and must be able to cooperate with supine positioning and gaze fixation. Exclusion criteria would involve pre-existing lid or orbit disorders, trauma or injury, or even prior procedures, which may distort the regular anatomy. Patients with a pre-existing strabismus or ocular motility restriction might also confound their ability to maintain primary gaze. And of course, patients with systemic autoimmune or muscular disorders are also excluded. This includes patients with myasthenia gravis, thyroid illness, or even amyloidosis. Now, for our primary outcome measures, again, as mentioned, I'll be measuring these 4 parameters from the upper eyelid. And of course, descriptive statistics of the measurements will be taken from mean, median, standard deviation, and notably the 5th to 95th percentile, considering our smaller sample size. Now, the following photo is actually an image drawn from a similar study done among an Indian population. So we see here in S labeled is the skin and subcutaneous tissue, the O as the orbicularis oculi, LMSC as mentioned, and T as the tarsus. They also were able to appreciate the pre-epineuritic fat pad in this image. This next image is what we were able to generate when we tried doing it here in our institution. And this first measurement is our total upper eyelid thickness, which is generally close to the findings of the same Indian study I mentioned, where they actually had an average measurement of 1.6 plus minus 0.2. This meanwhile is the orbicularis oculi measurement, followed by the LMSC, and as well as the tarsal measurement. These measurements were generated from the patient with immersion UBM, with the patient having their lids closed, utilizing a scleral cup as well. The patient was instructed to keep the examined eye closed while the contralateral eye was open to maintain fixation on primary gaze. Measurements were generally drawn from around the center of the cornea. However, there were inconsistencies in the scan we were able to come up with, so we plan to correct that as well by refining our subsequent tests. And for secondary outcome measures, again, we will also be looking into intersession repeatability of these measurements on UBM. So we plan to take 3 repeat scans and see whether the structures significantly differ with each iteration. Inter-observer agreement will also be checked. So frames will also be captured and sent to various specialists to see if they would also generate similar measurements of these structures. And as mentioned, these measurements will also be correlated with age and sex. Now, this study would provide the first baseline reference values for upper eyelid structural thickness in adult Filipinos utilizing UBM. Generally, the studies done prior with this modality has been largely focused in the Western population. In Asia, there were a few Indian studies and a few in the Chinese populations. However, we do consider that there's still a large difference in anthropometric measurements of the upper eyelids with our population compared to these ones. Now, structural measurements of these structures could provide objective markers for structural changes and tarsal plate thickness variability among patients, allowing us to improve diagnostic accuracy in different types of ptosis or even different lid lesions, and could aid in assessment of and planning of these conditions. Notably, the gold standard currently for upper eyelid structure examination is MRI. However, this tends to be costly and not very time efficient. So at least this proposes a cheaper rather and more accessible alternative, at least for examining more anterior upper eyelid structures. This also provides baseline data for subsequent surgical planning and prognostication, again, of various oculoplastics procedures. So that ends my first proposal. And so this is my next study proposal.
Let's pause first. Any questions for Rich? Dr. Christine, do you have any question?
Yeah, wait. Okay, so the concept is good. Wala naman ako dyan. Siya nag-ano. Okay na?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah. So the concept is good. Of course, one is the kasi kulang siya sa view. Maybe that's why, of course, you would like the MRI, aside from the cost, is maybe because it can give us another view, like the eggshell view, di ba? This one kasi, aside from what you showed, Rich, like from our ultrasonography, parang to me, can you still adjust the gain so that it will be similar to the one of parang your comparative, the paper you're comparing it to? Because it's very hard to actually see yung, di ba, what you shared from
Yes.
our ultrasound. It's a bit difficult.
Just the
It
gain.
was all snowy.
Yeah.
Good.
For the first one, actually, the gain was around 80, so much higher. But so there's a lot of washout with some of the more uh, with some of the upper eyelid structures. So actually, for some of these scans, we had to reduce the gain to make the surrounding structures more distinct. So I think for this scan, I think it was around just 53 compared to these earlier shots, which were around a gain of 80. So
But
it's also one confounder for this topic where we would have to adjust the gain across different uh, frames to better highlight various structures in the scan.
if you go back to can you go 3 slides back? What gain kaya is what that? Yung isa. The one from the report you're lifting it from.
Oh, this one. Unfortunately, the studies I was able to find are related to the topic made no mention of the gain they utilized. At best, they only cited the millihertz they were using for their scans, which was 50, the same as for these scans.
Kasi it has to be this so that you can see, diba? You can really discern the layers. Kasi compared to what you're showing from our ultrasound, it's really too snowy. So, number one, that is my question, how you can make it more discernible. Kasi the more you're going to subject yourself to inaccuracy, di ba? Kasi hindi siya ganito ka-clear. So that's my number one. Number two, you're only showing the thickness, which is also very helpful. So that's why this kind of imaging should be, ito dapat yung nakikita natin. it would have been helpful if it's if for elevator procedures, 'di ba the length really matters. So uh kaso thickness lang talaga yung pinapakita mo, no? Because there's no other view except this one, tama? Ito lang
Yes, Doc.
talaga. Okay. And then sige, so my last one would be instead of 18 and above, maybe can you put a cut to it? Maybe 18 to 35? Kasi how would you know, 'di ba? Kung 18 and above, usually like a 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, meron na silang, I mean, of course, yeah, that's part of your excluding exclusions, 'di ba? Na dapat wala silang doses and all that. I don't know if you should put like a number to it. I just I'm not sure. Because if you just want normative, then you can just choose like 18 to 40, something like that. Yan
Or
lang.
you
Those
can divide it according to age group.
pwede rin, yeah, so that you get to have a
I agree
distribution.
with Christine's assessment of the imaging, no? You might want to check if you can get better images. Kasi the one that you got, you just really have the thickness and the tarsal plate, di ba? Parang, unless you can get better images, sayang.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Mm. I don't know how you can get this. Kaya ba yan?
Actually, my question then, Doctora, for Rich is, who will be your technician?
Ah, edi, yun na nga. Kasi
Diba?
di ba,
Ikaw
our,
ang operator.
ikaw yung, oo, yun din pala yun.
Because kahit kami na nag-UUBM, we don't measure
Those,
the
right?
lids, Doctora.
Oo nga.
Actually, I did this shot with Rich, but I don't know what I'm looking at that time.
Yeah, which is true. It has to be, and if ever man, let's say, if any consultant in the oculoplastic department, does it have to be na parang we're certified ultrasonog or ultrasound readers?
Hindi
Does it
naman.
have to be? No naman. Pero sige, ang labo talaga nito. It's hard.
Kasi ang makukuha mo lang talaga dito is the thickness.
Yung thickness,
Do
naman
you
siya
have instructions on the previous papers on where to take it, how to take it, anong area?
They also utilized a scleral cup filled with sterile water in their case. They took their measurements also at primary gaze with the measurement generally around the mid-pupillary line. The definitions I also mentioned, which structures were hypoechoic versus which were of mixed echogenicity, were also drawn from those studies. However, they don't really specify the exact methodology done if there was, let's say, lid markings done to
Yeah.
avoid to make sure they were within the same plane
Yeah.
as the mid-pupillary line.
The concept is good. It's really the imaging that you might have an issue with. Kasi
yeah.
lahat ganyan na makuha mo and makuha mo lang is thickness. Di ba?
Oo, yeah. And you have to see the relation also of the structures to each other. Di ba?
Yeah.
Like kanina, meron kang pre-aponeurotic fat to the levator muscle complex. Siyempre, titingnan mo rin yun. Even if it's not just the thickness, but the distance between those things also matter. So, ito lang talaga siya. Ganyan lang siya. Hindi na pwedeng, isa lang, no? It's just this view, right?
When we take it, it actually comes up as a video. So this was one of the clearer shots we were actually able to capture from that video.
I think the one Dr. Christine is asking is the plane.
Yeah.
So ito lang yun, Doctor.
Ayan lang.
Eggshell plane to. Eggshell, middle of the eyelid, what is included.
This was the middle of the eyelid pudak, on closed lids pudak.
Yeah, okay, sige. I mean, the concept is there. It might be useful if you get good images. My problem is if you don't get good images, what's gonna happen? No, so something worth pursuing. Back burner mo muna until siguro maka-practice ka ng image acquisition. Do a few more, see if there's any improvement in the image that you will see. No? The problem kasi is ang fluid nito is in the chamber, diba? In your water chamber, not naman on the structure itself. So hindi talaga magandang imaging ng,
I see.
diba? Kasi hindi naman fluid filled ang lids eh.
Yes.
So
Ah,
meron siyang water chamber. So anyway, try a few more. Rem, try a few more. Baka may makuha ka pa. Before you proceed, no? Before it's a i-back burner mo yung ano, it's a good idea. But
yeah, it is
until
naman.
you can get imaging na matino, baka mahirapan kang i-pursue ito. Yun lang. Okay.
Yes, Doc. Mata kasi ito ni Joe, Doc. Susubukan ko yung kay Barbs. Rich.
All right. So moving forward.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you also.
So this next topic will also be on imaging. So this is anterior segment OCT for mapping rectus muscle insertion on a normal Filipino population. So this is also a pilot study. And generally, in strabismus management, the location of EOM insertions have great implications in surgical planning, especially in reoperations such as slipped or lost muscles, or even complex alignment disorders. And these can confound clinical assessments. The proper determination of these insertions can inform surgical decision making, as well as reducing intraoperative time by minimizing intraoperative exploration and documenting baseline anatomy. So imaging, however, is traditionally done with CT or MRI or even UBM. However, modalities like this are generally more invasive and associated with greater cost. With ASOCT, we then have a means of rapid, non-invasive imaging, and it's been seen in previous studies to image all 4 rectus muscle insertions with the ability to measure limbus insertion distance. So for this study, my general objective is to determine the ability of the modality in visualizing the rectus muscle insertions and to generate preliminary normative measurements. So specifically, this is to measure the limbus to insertion distance, or LID, of each rectus muscle, determine its detection rate, evaluate the intersession repeatability and inter-observer agreement, and determine the correlation of these measurements between age. This is also a prospective cross-sectional observational normative study, again on adult Filipinos, with a projected sample size of 60 patients, drawing from standard deviation of 1 from literature and margin of error of 0.3. They actually account for 43 population and accounting for dropout and poor image quality, especially considering that we're doing 4 different rectus muscles. We increased it to 60. Inclusion criteria would involve patients able to cooperate and fixate with the imaging modality, and exclusion would be patients with prior ocular trauma, strabismus or strabismus surgery, as well as any other surgeries that may cause alterations in the patient's normal rectus muscle insertion, such as scleral buckle or GDD surgery. Patients with systemic autoimmune or muscular disorders, which may also alter rectus muscle morphology, are also excluded. For our primary outcome measure, so this would be to measure the limbus to insertion distance of each rectus muscle. So we'll be taking the mean, standard deviation, and range, and also produce a normative range at a 95% reference interval. So these are actually sample images as well of scans we tried. So this is for the medial rectus. Generally, muscles on ASOCT will be appearing as hypoechoic with an area of hyporeflective, with an area of hyperreflectivity just anterior to it, representing the insertion. This is for the inferior, lateral, as well as the superior. And so we'll be looking into the intersession repeatability of these lid measurements, asking taking 3 scans for each rectus muscle, as well as inter-observer agreement of these measurements. We'll also look into the muscle insertion detection rate, meaning the percentage of eyes where the insertion is visualized, as well as the detection rate per muscle. We'll also be correlating these measurements with age as well. And with the study, we see that this would be one of the first baseline references values for LID in Filipinos, as well as the first with ASOCT. Measurements taken from these may be able to guide preoperative EOM surgery planning, allowing surgeons to anticipate muscle locations. This would be more ideal, I would say, for a pediatric population where they would have challenges with positioning or maybe even more invasive procedures such as UBM. However, we are planning to do this on an adult population just to reach an agreeable sample size. Measurements from this would also aid surgeons, again, in the evaluation also of suspected abnormal EOM insertions, maybe as well in cases of slip or more so displaced muscle insertions. So that ends the second proposal.
Parang mas may ano yan.
Volume.
Nakikita. Pwede mo back the image? Can
But
you go
the
back?
view is still malabo.
No, pero at least you can see the ano ng konti, the distance.
Infantry ng muscles.
Pinakita yung may mga heat maps.
But siya kita? Ba't yung isa hindi?
Doctor, actually, we can play with the OCT machine para may mga heat maps.
I see.
Kaya
Oo.
pinakita. Ginawa naman namin.
Mm.
So,
So, nasaan dito ang insertion?
So it would be
Hindi namin makita.
Have your pointer at that.
dito ba?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this would be
that.
muscle itself, and the insertion would be the area of hyperreflectivity just anterior to it. So, sorry, my answer was a bit large.
Yeah, this is more obvious, no, than the UBM kanina.
Yeah.
Saan ang limbus? Saan ang cutoff mo ng limbus?
The limbus would be around here po though.
So you need to have a cutoff ng limbus mo. Kung ano ang I'm not sure about anterior segment OCT kasi kung anong tawag dito, landmarks mo to determine the limbus, di ba? You may be able to point out the insertion, but you want to you want to measure the distance from the limbus. So ano ang landmarks mo to determine that this is the limbus? Hindi pwedeng around that area.
Sorry, we'll refine na lang the definition.
Yeah. That's my comment there, no? So, okay.
Dr. Mary Rose has a question or comment. Doctor.
Yes. Ang question ko lang is, I'm seeing here a reference point from perhaps one angle. Kasi diba, the insertion is actually more of, it could be a few millimeters, diba? Because you're looking at the upper insertion and the lower insertion. Kasi for usability, diba? Do you measure also the lower border, upper border? Parang I'm trying to imagine the view from here. Is it understood? Can you hear me well? Hello?
Yes, no. Yes, no. I feel like one limitation of this
Nakikita
study
rin ba
would
yung
be
upper, lower
maybe-
border? Ganun.
I feel like one limitation of this study, Doc, would be the challenge in identifying the exact upper and lower border of these muscles, given that we are imaging it from an external approach.
Yes.
So shots we took were actually taken from just the center of the cornea as reference po, Doc. So also the mid.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
But we'll look at it, Doc. Thank you, Doc.
The technician issue will be a problem. So someone should be trained to do this measurements or shots.
Thank you, Doc.
Sige, next na tayo.
Okay, so I think that's doable, Rich. You just have to, yun nga, definition mo what Dr. Ramirez said. This is the superior ba dito? This is the inferior, and then what are the landmarks of the limbus, no? On anterior segment OCT.
Okay, thank you for that. So moving towards our last topic for myself. So this next one will be a prospective comparative study of anterior corneal integrity after CO2 laser blepharoplasty, comparing lubrication versus corneal shielding. So CO2 laser blef has been widely used for advantages in hemostasis, precision, and reduced operative time. Studies on the medium, however, find that its 10,600 nanometer laser is strongly absorbed by water, of which the cornea is actually very abundant of. So the tendency then is that when laser energy comes into contact with the eye, it's mostly absorbed in the anterior 100 to 200 micrometers, corresponding to roughly the anterior cornea. And case reports have cited superficial epithelial defects and on occasion even stromal damage or permanent visual impairment following these procedures. To mitigate the risk, some experts actually recommend corneal shielding. However, this is largely based on expert opinion and anecdotal data rather than comparative studies. At the same time, some reports even claim that the presence of anterior corneal damage still happens regardless of corneal shielding or not. And notably, there's a lack of prospective clinical studies directly comparing different corneal protection strategies, and even fewer incorporating objective outcome-based measures such as epithelial integrity and healing time. So as a general objective, I aim to evaluate and compare anterior corneal outcomes following laser blepharoplasty, comparing lubrication, metal corneal shields, or silicone corneal shields. As a specific objective, we'll be looking into the incidence of corneal epithelial defects among these three groups at post-operative day 1. And we'll also be comparing subjective ocular surface symptoms using the OSDI, comparing visual acuity changes across these groups, and determining the time to epithelial healing in affected eyes. So this will be a prospective comparative interventional pilot study targeting adult patients undergoing laser blepharoplasty. As a pilot study, we'll only be targeting a sample size of 12 per group, or 36 patients amounting to 72 eyes. And preoperative assessment with demographic, ocular history, including the use of any current topical medications, VA, and current corneal status will also be done via slit lamp examination. Laser settings will be standardized, and the duration of laser exposure will also be noted. So, inclusion criteria would involve patients with no contraindication to either corneal protection method, and patients with pre-existing ocular surface disease, such as those with severe dry eye symptoms, positive fluorescent staining, exposure keratopathy, corneal opacities, or even corneal dystrophies or degenerations are excluded. Patients with recent ocular surgery will also be excluded, as well as patients with prior blepharoplasty. And patients with recent contact lens use of less than 1 week preoperatively. So for comparison, the control group will be composed of patients utilizing lubrication only with Turbidex ointment. So this is selected as it's already part of the patient's post-operative medications to minimize costs. The experimental group 1 will be utilizing a metallic corneal shield with Tobradex ointment underneath as an interface. And group 2 will be using a silicone corneal shield. And outcomes will be first, the incidence of corneal epithelial defects at post-op day 1, determined by the presence of fluorescent staining on slit lamp. For this study, we plan to avoid severity grading to minimize inter-observer variability. And we'll be comparing the absolute and mean change from baseline ocular surface disease index scores at baseline, at day 1, and day 7. So we'll also be comparing the absolute and mean change from baseline VA and the time to complete epithelial healing in days seen at assessment post-op day 1, and if the patient does happen to have corneal defects at days 3 to 5 and at day 7. Incidence of persistent fluorescent staining beyond 72 hours post-op will also be noted. And this would actually provide the first prospective comparative data set on corneal protection strategies in CO2 laser blepharoplasty. This would allow us the assessment of whether current protection methods are sufficient in protecting corneal damage. Again, as mentioned, that damage was seen even in cases where patients were on corneal shielding. So this also clarifies whether corneal shielding does confer benefit or not, or if they would be necessary. And this would also allow us to identify preoperative and intraoperative risk factors for corneal injury. Currently, corneal protection strategies in laser blepharoplasty are largely founded from a tradition-based practice. This study aims to more shift that practice towards evidence-based standards in that regard. And that concludes my round of proposals.
Any question for Rich?
So, question lang, what are the options? Hindi ba required na may corneal shield lahat?
Not all yata.
Can our plastics people, di ba
Not,
pag ano ka,
yeah.
kailangan ka
It's
maglagay ng
actually-
metal?
It's actually required, but I put, but there are some that don't put.
Hindi,
So,
kasi nga, ano ang, because this might be negated by policy, no? Kasi policy, you need to have
you need to have a shield.
diba?
And and it has to be, I know it has to be metallic ata, kasi for the laser. So,
Yun ang hindi ko alam. So,
ako rin. May iba kasi that they don't. Like BBL doesn't put shields. So, I'm not sure. Although, so with the policy, I guess that's the one that we have to ask. Kasi I bring my shields. So some I know they don't use shields eh. I can't remember if in the wellness they asked to implement it.
maybe Marto, you've used the one in wellness. Policy
No,
there.
Doc. I don't use shield, Doc.
You don't use shield.
No,
Ano
yeah.
policy nila? So,
They don't have a
kahit-
policy. Surgeon preference po, Doc.
Surgeon's preference. So this will just this will just boil down to what the policy in the hospital is. Kasi if the policy in the hospital for CO2 includes shield, even if doctor's preference na wala, hindi pwedeng gawin ni Rich. Kasi you're going against as a study, no? Hindi papasa ng IRB.
I'll confirm na lang din po, Doc.
So please confirm lang, no? Kasi alam ko in others they don't also. Some use, some don't, no? It will depend kasi right off the gate, if policy requires shielding, then you'll have you'll have difficulty na getting this through IRB.
Great. Thank you, Doc.
It's a good study. We just have to make sure that wala kang foul sa sa IRB niyan. Kasi mahihirapan kang ipa-approve.
And then the patients, you'll get it from HSP.
Yes, Doc. HSP po, Doc. We have quite a bunch of patients po, Doc, who actually have dermatochalasis. We're able to appraise them naman po from time to time. So some are actually interested to try it
Kaya
po.
bang i-afford ang laser blef?
When I actually got to speak with Doc Marto, the rate we quoted was around 8 to 10,000 minus senior and the HSP discount pa po, Doc.
So, kakayanin. Sige, bala
Kahit
kayo.
ito.
Kaya. Okay, basta kaya ni Marto. So, yun lang. Sa akin lang is the policy. Kasi you might, if it contradicts at the very basic level, the policy of pwedeng palagpasin yun as practice kasi. Kaya lang, hindi pwedeng palagpasin yun as a clinical trial, as a trial.
We'll look into it po, Doc. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
So if anyone has a comment or question for Rich, you can just type in the chat box. For the sake of time, Mike, please start.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be presenting 3 proposals like Rich. So the first proposal, so this is a mixed method study, the practice patterns and decision making of glaucoma specialists on the use of EDOF IOLs in cataract patients with glaucoma. So as a short introduction, we know that cataracts have a prevalence of about 1.06% in the Philippine population in 2017. And glaucoma, on the other hand, is a cause of irreversible vision loss with a prevalence of 0.27% in 2017, according to the PDDS study. So, given these prevalence rates, these two conditions often coexist due to their predilection for older ages and those with risk factors. Hence, management requires meticulous patient assessment. And that includes IOL selection because IOL selection impacts the final visual acuity in terms of distance, intermediate, and near, as well as the contrast sensitivity. And ultimately, which is arguably the most important, would be patient satisfaction. So we know that there are types of IOLs, such as the monofocal plus, the EDOF, and the multifocals. So what we know so far is that traditionally monofocal IOLs have been used in glaucoma patients. The controversy lies in EDOF lenses, which have arguably less loss in contrast sensitivity but offer more in terms of intermediate BCVA. So what do the studies say? The studies say that in patients with mild or pre-perimetric glaucoma, there is good distance and intermediate BCVA, even improvement in near BCVA in those patients. There's also an acceptable contrast sensitivity, and the preferred IOL would be the non-diffractive EDOF type, such as that of the Alcon VVT. So what the studies don't say is that what are the preferences and practice patterns of specialists, specifically glaucoma specialists, and there's also limited evidence of use in moderate to severe glaucoma and those with more central field involvement. So the research question here is, how do glaucoma specialists select intraocular lenses in cataract patients with glaucoma? And how is this decision influenced by the new PhilHealth cataract package, particularly in relation to the use of EDOF intraocular lenses? So the general objective of my study would be to reconcile the gap between clinical evidence and physician practice patterns in terms of IOL selection, in glaucoma patients. My specific objectives are as follows: to survey glaucoma specialists on their preferences on IOLs in glaucomatous patients with cataracts, to identify prevalent practice patterns on IOL selection in glaucoma patients, to provide insight on clinical factors influencing IOL selection, to assess the influence of the new PhilHealth cataract package on IOL selection and counseling, and to explore ultimately through key informant interviews the decision-making processes, attitudes, and perceived barriers of glaucoma specialists regarding EDOF IOL use. So for my methodology, that would be a mixed methods cross-sectional survey with a qualitative key informant interview. Their study population includes glaucoma specialists across the Philippines with a convenient sampling for the survey and purposive sampling for the key informant interviews and then the inclusion criteria would include, of course, glaucoma specialists actively managing glaucoma and cataract patients. Exclusion criteria would be the glaucoma specialists not involved in IOL or cataract counseling, and those who are non-glaucoma specialists. So this is just a sample survey questionnaire taking into account the respondent profile, the general IOL practices in glaucoma, the use of EDOF, what the decision-making factors are, what the physician's attitudes towards EDOF are, and lastly for the PhilHealth influence. Although the final survey questionnaire would still have to be validated by a glaucoma specialist prior to use. And then lastly would be the barriers to IOL use. So these are my variables: the doctor demographics, the general IOL preferences, and then the decision-making factors and attitudes towards EDOF, and finally the PhilHealth influence. Because notably, there's still a third world country, and that we have to take into account the social determinants as well in these patients, hence the addition of this variable. So the analysis would include descriptive statistics that would detail the answers to the survey, and to identify proportions of responses, as we will be utilizing mostly Likert scales. And then for the qualitative aspect, we will do a thematic analysis of the key informant interviews. So for the potential outcomes of the study is that, first of all, we don't have any consensus guidelines yet. So this would serve as a preliminary study, and which, although doesn't give the consensus, it gives us an idea on the preferences of our glaucoma specialists with varying degrees of glaucoma. And then secondary possible outcome would be, has PhilHealth changed our practices with as mentioned, taking into account the social determinants of health? Did the new PhilHealth benefit change how we select IOLs in glaucoma patients? So that's the first.
Thank you, Mike. Any
Mike,
comments or questions?
what are you looking at? If, okay, aside from the fact na take out the PhilHealth issue muna, you want to see their parang practice patterns in putting in EDOF in glaucoma patients. Yun muna.
Yes.
Okay. So that's one part.
Yes, Doc.
Then there's a second part. After they have already decided, they've based it on scientific evidence, etc., etc. And then you have a part two asking if PhilHealth has influenced their decision making.
Yes, Doc. But actually, primarily, the foundation of the study would be more of like a CAP or a knowledge, attitudes, and practices. So I just wanted to emphasize the PhilHealth benefit because it would be the newest change, because the evidence on the use of EDOF or more premium IOLs in glaucoma patients have been around. There are systematic reviews as late as 2023. So this would still fall under attitudes, Doc.
Okay.
And then how it translates into practices.
I think my comment lang is you have to formulate the questions well so that hindi, kasi if you're saying that there are already papers on the use of EDOF in glaucoma patients, di ba meron na?
Yes, Doc.
Is it well supported by studies now? Okay, so ang inaano mo is gusto mo lang malaman kung ginagawa na siya ng mga doktor dito.
Yes, Doc, in a way. And also since there's just there's just some studies that's still not conclusive, and especially in the types of the IOLs, and syempre mixed din, Doc, yung mga multifocal use and as well as the EDOF. So I wanted to focus on how the practices are locally.
So EDOF IOLs lang. You're gonna take out the multifocals already.
Yes, Doc.
Just EDOF, hindi Monoplus.
Will include it pa rin, Doc, sa IOL preference. So masasama pa rin siya sa descriptive statistics, Doc.
Okay, sige. I just want you to formulate it well so that it doesn't muddle the question. The first question should be technical. Do you use EDOF? Do you use multifocal? Do you use ganyan? In what instances do you use it or not, etc., etc. Diba? So that's the first part. And then without any hint of any reimbursements muna, no? Without any question on reimbursement. And then in a part 2 of your questionnaire, that's when you put, if you have been using something like that, are you using it more because of it has the reimbursement affected your kasi wala namang sasagot na yes, I'm gonna do EDOF because of reimbursement. Hindi naman, you might not be able to get a good response to that. I think framing the question in a way that if you believe that EDOF is a good alternative for glaucoma patients, did the PhilHealth improve, parang increase your usage, something like that.
Okay.
Basta frame it in such a way that it doesn't influence the way they answer, no? Because
Yes, Doc.
yeah, sige lang. Okay.
Any other comments for Mike?
Sorry, can you go back to the questionnaire? Ano ang
Dr. Christine? While Mike
Let
is...
Shaman finish first. It's okay.
Here, Doc, this is just a sample questionnaire. This will not in any way the final one. But
yeah, so
this
you'll
will-
have to specify kung ano yung hinahanap po. Let's say Section C, do you consider EDOF IOLs when in moderate glaucoma, in advanced glaucoma, in controlled glaucoma, whatever? Kasi iba-iba that might affect also the decision. I don't know, Rem, think about it, no? Some people, like in retina, we are more comfortable using EDOFs in maybe stable macular issues, no? But we will not use it for uncontrolled diabetes. But it's not a hard no, it's not a hard yes. So you may want to qualify. If it's advanced glaucoma, are they still willing to use it? If it is moderate glaucoma, are they going to use it? If it's mild glaucoma, they're going to use it. Okay. And then decision-making factors, specify ano yung, what is 1 to 5, no?
Yes, Doc.
1 is least likely to influence, 4 most likely to parang influence me to use, etc., etc. Just be clear with ano.
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Sige.
Any Dr. Christine?
No, that was my same question was the same one that of Sherman's. Like if it's mild or moderate and then advanced, what type of lens is being used talaga? Yung parang ganun ba? Kasi this one, it's just like, it's so much. So, I don't know if you want, yeah, parang quantify lang. Same point as Sherman's. Yeah,
Thank you, Doc.
thank you.
So moving on to my second proposal. So this one would be the association of OCTA-derived parafoveal vessel density with 10-year ASCVD and prevent risk scores, a cross-sectional study. So we know that for a fact that cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of mortality worldwide, and many are asymptomatic until late-stage disease. Hence, it's very dangerous aspect. So because of that, various risk scores have been developed in order to screen these patients before actual disease or overt disease develops. So these are based on the patient's age, blood pressure, cholesterol, the presence of diabetes, and smoking. However, these do not directly measure microvascular disease and would need more invasive methods such as coronary artery calcium scoring, etc. And what we also know is that microvascular disease may be a precursor to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So, to give you an idea, that the 10-year ASCVD risk was developed in 2013, and this was based on a pooled cohort in the United States of adults 40 to 79 years old with the races of whites and African Americans. So the variables included the age, the sex, lipid profile, blood pressure, the use of antihypertensive, diabetes, and smoking. And it uses the prediction of the 10-year ASCVD risk. However, the limitations of this is that it doesn't factor in microvascular risk factors. And of course, it contained a pooled cohort of people who aren't Asians or who don't fall under the whites and the African Americans. So in 2023, the PREVENT score was developed, which would cover a population that is of an increased range of 30 to 79 years old, factoring multiple races across the population in the United States. So another inclusion in the variables would be the addition of metabolic parameters such as the patient's BMI and kidney function, which would often be an indirect indication of microvascular profile of these patients. And because of this, you now have a broader risk stratification, more inclusive of other races, and has 10 and 30-year ASCVD risk. However, this has yet to be universally adopted, as the 10-year ASCVD risk still remains the most used among researchers. So OCT angiography is the state-of-the-art non-invasive technology that visualizes retinal microvasculature. It allows us to quantify the parafoveal vascular density as well as the foveal vascular zone because, for example, our Zeiss HD OCT Cirrus and at the eye center uses spectral domain technology that takes multiple B scans at near-infrared wavelengths. So it's able to detect the movement of RBCs in the background of a static retinal picture. So it's able to generate reliable superficial capillary plexus vessel density values. And the machines that we have at the eye center provide automated quantitative data. So according to the evidence, retinal vasculature exhibits similar anatomy and physiology with the brain, the kidney, and the heart. So changes in retinal vasculature have actually been shown to be correlated with coronary artery disease and its severity. Furthermore, retinal parafoveal vascular density was independently associated with subclinical coronary atherosclerosis in a study done in 2025. However, there is still limited data on its role in primary prevention, as in the previous studies mentioned. These were done in patients with already established prior myocardial infarctions or strokes. So there's still no data on how the OCTA can be or what the OCTA's role is in patients without established ASCVD. Furthermore, the OCTA itself has no normative data yet, so we don't know yet the range of values, for example, for the vessel density that would correspond to the normal population. So my clinical question would be, can OCTA-derived macular microvascular metrics reflect subclinical cardiovascular risk in patients without prior ASCVD events? So my general objective is to determine the correlation between OCTA-derived macular microvascular parameters and estimated 10-year cardiovascular risk from the ASCVD and PREVENT scoring in patients without prior ASCVD events. So my specific objectives would be to determine the association between the parafoveal superficial capillary plexus vessel density with the ASCVD risk score, and to do it as well with the PREVENT risk score. To also evaluate the relationship between the foveal avascular zone area, which can also be, or the circularity can also be a measure of the health of the microvasculature in the retina, with the 10-year ASCVD risk score and the PREVENT scores, and to compare OCTA parameters across cardiovascular risk categories. So this is a cross-sectional study as well, with a study population including those 40 to 79 years old with no prior stroke or myocardial infarction. The sampling method would be consecutive sampling of patients seen at the OPD with around 120 participants in order to be to have a power of 80% with a alpha of 0.05. So the inclusion criteria would be patients aged 40 to 79 years old at the Makati Med OPD with sufficient data to compute the ASCVD and PREVENT risk scores, and those that can tolerate OCTA imaging. The exclusion criteria would be those with known ASCVD as mentioned, those with incomplete labs, with ocular pathologies confounding result, those with severe diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, media opacities, maculopathies, vasculopathies, high myopia, and those with poor OCTA signal strength and significant signal artifacts. So the scan protocol would be the 3x3 millimeter slabs, which will provide the best parafoveal vessel density values. And these would be auto-segmented with them taking a mean of 2 scans, just like in other studies, and to use the fast track when applicable, noting the SCP parafoveal vessel density, FAZ area, and perfusion density. So these are the variables as previously mentioned. And this is a sample of a derived value from a sample OCTA. And then these are the PREVENT and ASCVD risk calculators, which can be easily accessed online. So the statistical analysis would include descriptive statistics of the baseline characteristics of the patients, and to use Pearson or Spearman correlation, depending on the normality, in order to detect correlation. So the potential outcomes, of course, is for clinical use, as we know that there are only invasive measures in order to identify the risk for ASCVD definitively. However, the OCTA provides a non-invasive quick examination that has the potential to correlate independently with risk for cardiovascular events. Furthermore, there are no studies of the similar nature done yet in the Philippines, so this may help characterize the retinal microvascular profile in Filipino patients. So that ends my second proposal, though.
Do you have your exclusion criteria? Sorry, hindi ko yata nakita.
Here, Doc.
Okay.
So this is mirrored after the other studies, Doc, on OCTA parameters. So
Okay.
more of trying to catch before the onset of microvascular disease. So we'll just exclude muna yung those with confounders.
Okay. Sige lang. 120 participants?
Yes, Doc. Pero my plan is to coordinate with the IMOPD kasi they would really get all these workup naman. So we'll just have the patients referred to our OPD and have the baseline eye checkup. And then if they qualify, then we can undergo the study separately.
So they should have sufficient data to compute their scores, di ba?
Yes, Doc.
Do they actually routinely score these patients?
When I ask Doc anecdotally lang, they rarely do use the 10-year ACVD risk because of it dahil mga whites and African Americans usually population. So na-overestimate actually yung risk score. Pero yung PREVENT risk score, Doc, I think they're starting to adopt it na kasi the AHA already recommended it because it's more inclusive for other races.
Okay. Sige.
But it's the one we can use for scientific purposes, Doc.
I'm just thinking kasi kung hindi ka mahirapang kumuha ng pasyente. Kasi if they don't score it, you might have a lack of population, di ba?
What they do, Doc, is they get the same labs naman na I mentioned that's enough to get the score from at least the PREVENT, Doc. So routinely naman may mga HbA1 lipid profile.
Okay, sige. You will have to write a letter to me, Dr. Mitzi, and to Rox for how are you going to do these exams in the OPD and in the machine.
Yes, Doc.
So
Also for Rich itself.
Thank you, Doc.
lahat yan cost KI center, so you will have to convince them.
Yes, Doc.
Lang naman. Sige, we will support naman, no? So, but syempre kailangan yan. I-plan. Hindi nyo lang ibabagsak bigla yan.
Ito, Doc, yung pinakamahirap sa mga proposal ko gawin.
Sige, thanks.
Sige po.
Okay.
So, moving on to the final proposal. So the third proposal is an agreement of an AI-based OCTA quantification application with the Zeiss Angioplex metrics for SCP, vessel density, perfusion density, and FAZ area, a proof of concept study. So like I mentioned earlier, the OCTA machine that we have is able to reliably measure the vessel density. And then, however, this technology is not accessible to all other this is not accessible to everyone. So this is where AI comes in as an alternative accessible method for OCTA parameter extraction and the potential for it to democratize research in research-limited settings. So my research question would be, among adult patients undergoing OCTA imaging at Makati Medical Center, how closely does the AI-based image analyzer measurement of SCP vessel density, FAZ area, and vessel perfusion percentage agree with corresponding metrics generated by the Angioplex device software? So AI does it is that through a custom developed browser-based research tool using the Claude Anthropic Vision API. So this operates on rendered unfuzz images, not the reflectance signal and that Angioplex is based on, which is sort of a limitation. And then the analyzer applies a structured protocol in order to identify the SCP vessel density, FAZ area, and vessel perfusion. So my objective is to determine the agreement between the two values in terms of the three metrics that are generated. The specific objectives is to measure the SCP vessel density, FAZ area, and vessel perfusion using both for each enrolled participant to determine how consistently AI-based image analyzer and the Zeiss Angioplex software produce the same values, and then to determine whether they both or whether the value is overestimated or underestimated. So this is also a cross-sectional agreement study where we will retrieve the OCTA, unfuzz, and Angioplex metrics of patients at the CLS Eye Center with a sampling method of interclass correlation coefficient. So in order to achieve a 0.90 or with a minimum acceptable reliability of 0.70, then we will need 62 OCTA samples. The following are inclusion criteria, and the exclusion criteria would be similar to that of the previous study, which would be independent confounders to alter OCTA measurements, poor image quality on OCTA, and those with significant projection and motion artifacts. So it's the same as earlier what I described, but the AI-based analyzer, on the other hand, would be to get the unfuzz image and upload it and then be able to determine the variables. So we will be conducting descriptive statistics as well with an interclass correlation coefficient, which will determine the agreement whether they correlate with each other. And then a Bland-Altman analysis will be done to determine the degree or the difference in the measurements. So potential outcomes of the study is the first of its kind. So it may guide future studies using AI-based OCTA analysis. It may provide clinical guidance in the future, especially when we have more normative data, and also as well as more OCTA-related studies to guide clinical decision making. And then, of course, the potential of AI-based programming, which can democratize healthcare for all. So that ends my third proposal.
May palakpakan. Okay. So my question is, you are going to compare the findings of the OCTA machine, di ba? Meron na
Yes.
siyang readout Meron na yung findings, di ba?
Yes, Doc.
And then you will put the image into an AI software and see how the correlation or the agreement between the findings, no?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. My question here is very basic, no? Why is there a need to do that? Because
Kasi, Doc,
all of your OCTA machines will come with their software. It's not as if it's a fundus photo that doesn't come with a software. Diba? Yung fundus photo, sige, kasi walang interpretation yan, walang numbers yan, walang metrics yan. You put it through AI, if it measures vessel density, vessel thickness, optic nerve, whatever, then you can do that, no? But every OCTA machine will come with its own software to give you the metrics. The one that I'm thinking of is to have a common software to interpret different OCTAs. Diba? Parang OCTA ng ibang ng Heidelberg, OCTA ng Zeiss. That could be a future. Kasi if you are just going to say democratize the OCTA, hindi mo naman siya ma-democratize with this. Kasi in order for you to get an OCTA image, you need to have the OCTA which comes already with its software. Diba? Maybe an application that I'm thinking of is if you have different OCTAs, patients took different OCTAs from different time points, you can run it through your AI and then come up with a more common interpretation, something like that, no? Sige, go ahead.
Doc, I agree na that would be the best, or that would be the most ideal situation. But since this is a preliminary, the plan is for this to be a preliminary study. So if we're able to establish that the AI can produce an application that can agree with the Zeiss, then we can develop an AI that can agree with other machines as well.
Ang ano ko lang is put that in your goals, no? Kasi if you're just democratizing this machine, it's impossible for you to democratize this machine because it already bibilin mo yon para makakuha ng image and it comes with a software. It's automatic. So in the goal is to parang not just democratizing but just really to be able to compare among different OCTA results, something like that. Eventually, yes, I agree it's a pilot, no, but eventually that is, for me, that is the use that I'm looking at. No.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Or if someone gives me an image na walang findings, I can just run it through the machine and it will give me the findings, no. Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is doable, no.
So, Sherms, you mean you accept na talaga the software that it is accurate?
Software
Na parang you don't have to doubt it. You don't have to doubt yung reading na ilalabas niya. Based on the photo capture ng
Hindi,
OCT.
ang reading ni Zeiss?
Oo.
Wala, that's just reading it. It's just saying height and weight. It's ganyan. There's no way for you um to second guess that, no, because those are parang
I understand.
yeah,
Inherent na sa kanya yun.
hindi siya subject to interpretation eh. Ang gusto mo
Yes.
lang, ang gusto yata ni Mike is you get an image from a patient, ni walang reading, ni ano, you can run it through a software and see, and give you the same readings as the one that the machine is giving you. Something like that.
I see. Yeah. It's nice. Yeah.
Ito doable to, at saka you can use kahit sino-sinong pasyente. You
Yes,
can
Doc.
just iSetter staff, you can just use kasi hindi mo kailangan unlike the other study where you have to get your scores for hypertension and whatever, no. This one is just go straight in.
Yes,
Try
Doc.
it. Tsaka hindi pwedeng retrospective to.
Hindi pwede, Doc, na magkumuha na lang ako sa mga previous na OCT.
Kaya nga, hindi ba pwede?
Yun, Doc, yung isa kong plan talaga. Para mas...
Baka meron kang, ang ano mo lang naman, ang kailangan mo lang naman, you don't need history, you don't need you just need normal. Diba normals lang naman?
Yes,
And
Doc. Normal lang na
with good
maganda yun.
enough scanning quality. And then you have the age already, you have the demographics on the machine already.
Yes, Doc. That's the plan if ever for the...
Retrospective. Okay.
Yes, Doc.
Tingnan mo lang if you have enough patients for OCTA.
Yes, Doc.
Okay.
Thank you, Doc.
Hello. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to commend Rich and Mike, no, for coming up with excellent proposals, no. I think this is the quality of papers that we should be looking at, no. It's just a matter of being creative and looking at what you have and what you can use, no, and do not be afraid of going into something new and coming up with unique proposals, no. So yung kay Rich medyo mahirap, but I'm glad that he wants to try that, no. You just have to refine it a little bit more. The seed of the idea is there. You just have to refine it para hindi ka mahirapan, no. Well, a negative outcome is also an outcome, no. You can always say na hindi mo ma-image or whatever, but yeah, you can try it, no. So those are good efforts, no. So congratulations to Rich and Mike.
Thank you po, Doc.
Then please wish Trisha and Ollie good luck, no. I think Jan has scheduled mass for them also. They are taking their written exams on Sunday, no. So hopefully they do very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc. Just want to follow up Steven, Jolo, and Barbs for your IRB approvals. It's already May next month. So the earlier,
Hindi ka graduate na walang paper.
yeah, the earlier you finish, the earlier you graduate.
And then kasi submission of requirements to the Philippine Board of Ophthalmology to take the exam is around end of January or end of Feb. So kailangan tapos kayo lahat nun. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. See you next.
Thank you, Doc.
Mm.